Stop. Don't go anywhere too fast. It's time to listen to a Head Over the Footy podcast.
Gather Round is here. It's a big week in the calendar of the AFL season, and it's huge because we're going to go through the top 3 games to watch in Gather Round. There's some cracking games on, and then we're going to give you our tips. And we're some really good tips that we give here at Head Over the Footy. We have got a history of pulling off some absolute upsets and predictions. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We're also going to go through a few other things later. If you're going to a Gather Round, we're going to give you some advice on where to go and keep yourself entertained. So let's crack into it. Just remember, this show comes out every Wednesday, so be sure to tune in. We preview the upcoming games. And let's crack into it. We got the top 3 games to watch, and we got no one else except for the Connor Kennedy here to join us and preview the games. Welcome, Connor.
Thanks, Max. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, mate. Well, let's crack into it. And starting off with the top 3 games to watch, and the number 1 game is, which one is it? I'm just curious. It's Collingwood and Hawthorn. And this game is an absolute cracker. Jack Ginnivan playing against his old side, Collingwood, and that's going to be huge. That will be huge. Collingwood, there's history there. Jack Ginnivan left the club. Now, he left the club, and one of the reasons why he did leave, he was talking on the American Aces podcast, and he said, I wanted to stay at Collingwood, but I went to Bali on a end-of-season trip with the boys, Collingwood teammates, and he came back, and none of the teammates sent a message to him saying, I want you to stay at Collingwood. I think he had 1 year remaining on his contract, and sort of because of that, that's one of the reasons why he sort of went to Hawthorn. The other reason was obviously there was a 4-year contract in front of him, and compared to 1, so you take that. But yeah, that was one of the reasons. So there's a little bit there, and he's saying a little bit, so the tensions may be rising. And another reason why I think, go on.
Yeah, well, I was going to say as well, I mean, he was just on the edge of Collingwood's 22, wasn't he?
Correct.
So at Hawthorn, he's getting a game every week, for sure.
Absolutely.
No question about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this has got the potential to cause a real stir during the game. There's that stuff that it's happened pre-game, but during the game, Collingwood know him better than anyone else, and he loves to draw free kicks, loves the high tackles. We spoke about this on Monday, on our episode that came out on Tuesday, reviewing the round, is how Ginnivan was playing for free kicks. He loves it. He gets high tackles and he ducks. He's a master of ducking, and Collingwood know that. So these defenders in the Collingwood side, they all know that he'll be going for these high free kicks, but they're not going to have a bar of it because they know that they can get into trouble by giving away these free kicks, giving away potential goals. And do you agree with me, Connor?
Yeah, I do. And I think that there's going to be a lot of tension in this game. I think we'll see, if not a full-blown fight, I think we'll see something a little bit rough and lots of push and shove with Ginnivan and his old side. I don't think, from the way that you've just described it, I don't think there's too many friendly feelings going on there.
Yeah, and the thing about this is Ginnivan, he loves these games. He loves the theatre. He loves the action. He likes a little bit of back and throw. So he will enjoy this. He thrives in these situations. And Collingwood, he'll get under their skin. It's going to be high intensity. Collingwood won't want to go 1-4. They'll be expecting to win this game. But I reckon Ginnivan, he's going to throw a few punches at him. And let
me say this. This game is very important for Collingwood.
Yep.
This is a little bit of a turning point in the season, whether they go 2-3 or it would be a disaster to get upset here. But Hawthorn have been known to do crazier things.
Yep.
So they're a bit of they're not a dark horse to actually make the 8 or anything this season, but you have to be on your game when you're playing Hawthorn because they can whip out a good game at any time.
Certainly. And the other thing is Hawthorn, they'll rally around Ginnivan. They'll want to get the result for him. So there's heaps to play for here. I'm really looking forward to it. And the other thing is Sam Mitchell. He loves these games. He likes these storylines, the coach of Hawthorn. So I'm very excited for this one. It's happening on Sunday. It's the last game of the round. So that one will be a cracker. In at number 2, the second best game to watch this gather round is Fremantle and Carlton. Both teams 3-0, undefeated. Freo's backline was crazy good last week, holding Adelaide to 4-10-34. And the other thing about this game was Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow were exceptional last week in the Good Friday game against North Melbourne. Harry Mackay kicked 5 goals. He was kicking them as straight as anyone in the AFL. And Curnow, 4 goals for him. He was on fire as well. But this is the thing about Freo. They kept Adelaide to 34 points, and Alex Pearce and Luke Ryan, their 2 key defenders, they were on fire. So they've got a real chance of keeping Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow quiet this week. And we look at Pearce's games last week. He had 13 touches, 5 marks, 5 tackles. He was on the ground for 100% of the game, didn't come off once. He was the only player to do that. And Luke Ryan was just as good, 27 touches, 10 marks, a game-high 742 metres gained. So it's going to be game on, I think, this one. It's going to be a tight one. It's tough to predict. We're going to go into our tips later, but what do you think about this game?
Look, Max, I think for me, this is game of the round for sure. These are 2 teams that we've both predicted in our season top 8, and I think they're both pushing for top 4 for the season as well. At the moment, given their form, they're both 3-0, and so I think you don't want to miss this game at all. I think it's going to be a cracker.
Yeah, and I think it will be as well. It's 2 teams that are looking good. Carlton people will say Carlton, they're a better side than Freo, but from what we've seen in the first 3 games of the season, they are just as good as each other. And
yeah, and I think, look, Carlton on paper do have a little bit more firepower, but Freo constantly go under the radar. People constantly underrate them. And Carlton have the opposite problem, being a big club. People constantly overrate Carlton as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup.
Definitely. And we'll give you our tips for this game shortly in this episode. Later on, we're going to go into our tipping. And Connor, you're doing well, so I want to definitely hear what you have to say about who will win this game. But the next game to watch, and in my view, this is the game of the round. Now, I know that Fremantle-Carlton's a good game. Collingwood-Hawthorn is another good game. But Adelaide have not won a game this season. They're playing against Melbourne. Gather round. This is what will kickstart the round. It's Adelaide on their home turf. They're going to get heaps of fans down because they haven't won a game this year. They're 0-3. And D's, they defeated Port at the venue last round in round 3. And the D's they're going to stay there for the whole week. So they haven't come back to Melbourne after beating Port. And the pressure's on Adelaide Crows. They re-signed their coach Matthew Nicks. They extended his contract. And they haven't won a game in 2024. And they're expected to make the top 8 this season. A lot of people were tipping them before the season, they were tipping them to make the top 8. So they only scored 34 points last week. Only 4 goals in that. So very poor from them. And they were the highest scoring team of 2023, averaging more than 95 points per game. But this season, the Crows are averaging just 10 goals per outing. And in the first quarter last week against Freo, they only had 3 inside 50s to Freo's 28. So they're struggling, Adelaide. The pressure's on them. And in the big scene, the big occasion of Gather Round, kickstarting the round on Thursday night, they will want to produce something here, and if they don't, they'll be walking off to the sound of boos, I reckon, from their home fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think that for me, that was a big game to watch as well. And so, look, you'd think that Melbourne would have the upper hand, but Adelaide could come out with a big statement as well. Who knows? Because like I said on Tuesday's podcast, I'm not convinced about Melbourne this season. Yeah,
well, there you go. And you're tipping well this year, so I don't take any of your opinions lightly. So that's going to be a good game. Like Melbourne's, I think, better team on paper, clearly, and Melbourne are the better team, but the sense of occasion and what's at stake for Adelaide may spark them up, and they'll need to produce something. Yeah, so should be a cracking game. Well, let's get into our tips now, and there are some mighty games coming up.